Your ancestors made it across, and mine survived so that you and I could be here right now, doing this. You know? Because it's not about me or you.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yes, I know what you mean.
It's bigger than me and you.
What's touched you to push to make Bound in the first place?
I tell everybody this because it's a place of, it's embarrassing. But I live in Ladera, Inglewood area, and I lived there for like 4 years, and I didn't know my neighbors, and I didn't want to know my neighbors. I'm living here in Africa in a black community, and I am alienating myself. Why? You know, why? When I was in Kenya, all I wanted to do was to connect with African Americans. But here I am now in their midst, and I'm like, what is this thing? You know? And then you sit and you start to look at everybody's face, and you look at every when I look at young black boys, 15, 16, 17 years old, because I have brothers who are 16, 17 years old, I see my brothers. I literally see my brothers. And that just continued to like do this thing, like, no, you have to go in here, you have to go in here, you have to go in here. And I went in, and then I realized that it wasn't even me who had to go in there, that there's a call that's coming from way back that's saying, I need you to go in here for me. Because I need you as the people who are left behind, who are ripped from families. I need you to make me whole. And the other side is, I need you to make me whole. Because I think when me and you are here, we forget that before us, there were others who were torn apart. And who's making them whole? You know? And we have to do that. We have to do that. There's a reason why the 60s, there's a reason why Jim Crow ended in 64, and most African countries are getting their independence in 63, 64. Why is that? Why do we have a picture of Kwame Nkrumah and Martin Luther King? Why is that? Why did W.E.B. Du Bois start to speak about the independence of Africa and mentor African leaders? Why? You know, we can't stop asking, what did they see that we didn't, that we don't, or that we're seeing? Why did Isaiah need to find his DNA, get his lineage? Why? Why did he have that passion to do that? Why is he in Sierra Leone right now? Why did Regina King find a DNA? Oprah Winfrey, Whoopi Goldberg, why?
Could you describe the meaning of the title Bound?
Now, bound just means, it has a multitude of definitions. If you look at the definition of the word bound, it speaks about how we're connected to each other as a people, how we are connected to our own experiences, how it's just being bound to stuff. We are connected to our experiences, we are connected to each other, we are connected to humanity, we are connected to the great human story. It's all, however you want to read it when you watch it, then bound then becomes how you understand the African American story, or how you understand the story of black people and the rest of the world. Let me tell you the highest compliment anybody gave me. This was a friend of mine who watched half of the documentary and paused it and called me. And she said, I watched this and you managed to make me empathize with the African American experience. My job was done. That was it. Because if you could get the other side, to see the other side of the story, your job is done. Because now people go into themselves, and now every time an African looks at an African American, and every time an African American looks at an African, you don't judge. You feel like you can go and ask a question and get the story. So what it is to be curious about each other. Let's not make decisions and conclusions. Let's be curious about one another. Bound is actually a universal story when you think about it, because it's about starting with the simplest. You know, for example, when you want to make impact, you start with a small point, and then you make a small dent, and then that dent gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And so what we were attempting to do with Bound is look at people who, for lack of a better term, find themselves on opposite sides of history, and have these people look at each other's experience and have a conversation emerge from that. Now, you can do that with any groups of people, because I believe, and this is just my understanding of history, because I study history and I love history a lot, is that no one group of people bears the complete history of themselves. Because even to fully understand African American experience or African experience, you have to understand the European experience that found itself on the opposite sides of this. So to understand how this experience led to this experience and this experience led to that outcome. You know what I mean? So this is just a different way of looking at history, which, because I think that history has been very one-sided. And by one-sided, I don't mean Eurocentric. I mean one-sided in the idea that one group or one person speaking a history is the entire story. It's not. So we are only one half of our own story. To get your own history, you have to get your fathers and your mothers. You see, everything is always in two halves. Nobody's ever complete. And there's this African phrase that says, until the lion learns how to write, the story of the hunt will always be written by the hunter. Which is true, but not really. Because until the lion learns how to write, then the story of the hunt will be written by both the hunter and the lion. That's the whole story.
The full story. The
full story. This documentary took 4 years to make. And because there was a lot of reading involved, and we have no concept of just how much history Black folks have. It's extensive. And it was so much, I had to say, stop. We have to dwindle this thing down. Then we had to dwindle it down. And we were like, still, we have to dwindle it. We have to keep dwindling it down. We have to keep dwindling down, because it was so much that is not out there that we don't even know about. And it got to the point where I had to get me, and this is going to sound so cerebral and out there, but I got to a point where I had to stop and say, literally, ancestors, whatever you want me to do, I'll do. Because right now, I have no idea what is happening. Literally, I was in that space when I was just like, I just was like, you have to guide me, because there's the story that I want to tell, but clearly there's a story you want told. The one thing I did not want was I didn't want this to be like a slugfest. I was like, no, we are Black folks. We can elevate our conversation with each other. We don't have to be like, I didn't want any of that nonsense. And one thing that I did want was I wanted the Africans, so that when this crosses over the ocean and goes to Africa, I wanted the Africans there to really have an understanding of the African American experience. And I wanted the African Americans to really understand African experience, so that when we meet each other, we have the backstory that explains this, so you know where it's coming from. We're more interested in people talking to each other, as opposed to people saying, oh, you think I'm this, or you think that. We do address that for like 2 minutes. We put out what ideas we have of each other. And then we're like, okay, now let's go into the documentary. Now let's talk to each other. There's this whole idea that African Americans are violent and to keep away from them. Somebody mentions it in the opening. So I wanted the first opening sequence. One thing we do have is we have mirror sequences, where whoever makes that statement has to do it in the mirror to themselves. You have to say it to yourself. You don't say it to the general public. You're speaking your truth to you, as you best know it. And then when we go into the dialogue with each other, you have to sit in, because we do have that, where they're sitting face to face, where you have Africans and African Americans across from each other, having conversation. And now what I didn't have, which I wish I did, I added in the documentary, is after that town hall, people are exchanging phone numbers, but like, what are you doing later on? And it just becomes this, because they got over this thing. And sometimes all you have to do is say, I think you suck, I think you suck. Okay, let's go for dinner. That's it. Sometimes you just have to do it and get over it. And so, you have that, like African Americans are violent, Africans are arrogant, this weird stuff. Africans sold African Americans, yeah. That one makes a cameo, and a really good cameo. Now that is the one tricky point in the documentary, and I don't know how people are going to feel about that. People are going to have a lot of opinions about that, but we tried to address that as best as we knew how. The way the documentary is structured, there's a folk tale or a narrative that's the spine, that's the narration. It's not just a narration of, oh, so we walked down the streets and we're not doing any of that. We have a narration, because we're African people. So we have a story that starts in Africa and ends in the United States.
On Twitter, you send Forrest Whitaker, it's a message that says, the unspoken consequence of war is those places in the soul covered by shadows, the wounds too painful for the light.
Yeah.
Can you please elaborate on that?
You know, when I think of what's happening in Nigeria right now with the missing schoolgirls, and I think of what has happened in the Congo, northern Uganda, with the whole Kony mess that's up there, people emerge out of the forest. They do. And they try to create a life. But in order for them to really have that life, there's something that will always be in the shadows. Because they have to keep it there. And we're taught to do that very well as African women. We're taught to put a lot of pain in the shadows. Because it will interfere with the running and the progress of everything else. And that, to me, is always what I go for. What's that thing that's in the shadows? That's what I want to see. Because you have to go into the shadow and get that thing out for somebody to really behold. You know what I mean?
That can be very ugly, going into the shadows.
It's very difficult. It's very difficult. Try going into your own shadows.
I don't have any shadow.
Look at you. And the first thing I actually did was a play called Beauty for Ashes. It was a play that I put on stage, which literally was talking about the craziness that had happened in my own life, my own personal life. And I put that on stage. And it had people who knew me at the time who came out and they were like, yeah, okay, drinks? You know, because it was this awkward place where everybody was like, maybe that was TMI for them. But I had to do it because I always believe that if you fight your demons in the light, they will stop bothering you in the shadows. You just have to pull them with you to the light and say, okay, now what? You can't scare me anymore.
The importance of comedy in your life. You do stand-up comedy. You have the comedy series, Booney TV. Where's this comedy come from?
Honey, we all have a little comedy. Yeah, it's important. You have to laugh, I'm telling you. If you can't laugh every day, in your life, there's something wrong with you. Not only should you be laughing at other folks, you should be laughing at yourself. You really I love to laugh. I do. And I've had crazy things in my life, and that's the best place to put them, because comedy is another way of looking at the craziness. Because human beings are phenomenal. They will put you through some stuff. You gotta put it on stage. You just have to talk about it on stage and be like, this crazy fool did this, and it's hilarious.
And that's your device to go into the shadows? Is that the easy? Does it help you do that?
It does. That helps. That really helps. But also comedy is such an art form. I was just watching Eddie Murphy. What?
Yeah, delirious. He's
insane.
Yeah.
Like, I was just sitting there and I was like, oh my goodness, this is brilliant. Even now I'm watching it, it's brilliant.
What makes Cat Williams, Eddie Murphy? I think Cat Williams you mentioned just because he's in the moment.
He's very in the moment.
Is that very inspiring to you? Like,
yes.
This is
poor little Ting Ting. Cat Williams is the energy out of that man. Have you seen Cat? He never stops talking. I'm just like, dude, how are you doing this? Love Louis C.K. I mean, you watch all these people and you're just like, oh, to be you for a minute. Phenomenal. As a comedian, when I watch them, like, I know, like, sometimes before I get up on stage, I watch, like, a whole 24 hours nonstop of comedians. Just 24 hours nonstop. To build up that, it's like the train when you're just like, and then you get up on stage, you're good to go because you've sat and watched the great ones do it.
That's another example of just being bold and stepping out on faith, because comedy is you get up there, they're going to like you or they're not going to like you. You get up there and do that.
Oh, it's scary. That's the scariest thing I've done. It's the scariest thing I've ever done. It's so scary. And I don't drink, so I'm straight up sober. It's so scary. I have such respect for them. I love watching Bill Cosby. Just sitting and he just talks. And I'm like, the confidence to just do that. Amazing. Because guess what? Because people actually want you to go into the shadows. Because they want to go into the shadows. And they'll meet you there. And then they'll say thank you. Because the things we see, we all want to sit in there, but everybody feels like I'm not allowed to. But then you allow them to go in. That's why comedy is so fantastic, because you're going to places that are that are prohibited. And people laugh because it's a release. And that's like I was telling you that I'm coming for you. As an African, I'm coming for you, you know. And people laugh at me when I tell them that, especially African Americans, and I'm like, I'm coming for you, and you, and you, and you. I'm coming for all of you, because I have to come for you. And I have to come for you because you remember me and I remember you. I'll be like, yeah, you know me. Be like, yeah, I know you. I'll be like, I know you too. Because we are close. We are close. It's only 500 years, so we are close. But I have to get you because I need you to get everybody else. Because you and I have to sit and say, okay, we need to get Billy now. We need to get Jean-Louis right there. We need to get Lupe. We need to get all these people. We need to bring it all home. But I have to start with you. Because you remember me. The others might not remember me. They're like, yeah, I have a vague recollection of home. Bring it all in. Because that's what Africa is. It's home.